And joining us now to discuss Bitcoin and other Bitcoin-related news is CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore in Boston. Hello there, Galen. Always a pleasure to see you. All right, so lots of mining activity going on. The United States now the king of Bitcoin mining in the world. Your thoughts initially on this?
Well, Christine, first of all, great to be here as always. I think the numbers that Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance put out, they really are authoritative on this subject and have been for some time, were pretty astonishing to me. U.S. with a global hash rate share of 35.4%. It wasn't that long ago, and I recognize and admit that my sense of time these days is very unreliable, but it wasn't that long ago.
Everyone's is.
We had a single-digit percentage share of global hash rate in the U.S. And to see that number up to 35%, that's really quite staggering. China, the report notes, has gone to zero. I wonder if there is some activity still going on in China that they may not be measuring. I have heard anecdotally about miners sort of surreptitiously or selectively turning back on there, but no doubt it seems that hash rate has to some extent recovered from the crypto crackdown in China, and much of that recovery has taken place in North America.
CoinDesk reporter David Pan had tweeted out that when Bitcoin mining was concentrated in China, there were several people out there who expressed concerns. But now about a third of the hash rate is now in the United States. Should we be similarly concerned? I mean, David was a little peeved that people seem to be cheering at the idea that the U.S. has a third of the global hash power. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the hash rate concentration issue has been a bit of a bugbear and perhaps not really founded on much. The idea that somehow a concentration of hash rate in one country would compromise the Bitcoin security model. I think the security behind Bitcoin is robust to withstand that kind of concentration, given that it is an open market for contributing hash rate that anyone in any country can participate in. I've always thought those concerns were a little overblown. I think there are some reasons to cheer the move to the U.S. The U.S. mining firms, do tend to be more focused on renewables, whereas much of the mining in China has been seasonally supported by coal-fired energy. That's something to be excited about. And look, I think as a resident of the U.S. and a citizen myself, I think it's exciting to see that activity happening here.
Right. I mean, there was that argument that because it was moving to the U.S. and there was more concentration of sustainable energy and, more mining companies looking for renewable green mining sources, that could be potentially a good thing. Looking at Bitcoin's price, is this the reason we're seeing a bit of an uptick today? Early in the morning, it was looking down, but now we're in the green.
I think has more to do with a sense of, support for a $57,000 price. You saw Bitcoin fall off that in the past 24 hours. And now we're back up to that level. I don't really subscribe to the notion that mining activity drives the price of Bitcoin. I think it's probably more the other way around. But I do think one thing that's worth watching is, as you noted, I think in your introduction, Christine, the past few months have been extraordinarily profitable for miners with a relatively low difficulty rate, a glut of cheap or free equipment, assuming that you can find a way to transport it and install it. And, those factors contributing to a fairly low cost to acquire Bitcoin. Look, I think it's natural that, large investors who want exposure to Bitcoin would be eyeing that as an alternative to buying in the spot market. As you're seeing some modest recovery in the hash rate and difficulty adjusting upward gradually, hasn't shot back up. I was looking at a Bitcoin profitability calculator this morning, and it looks like I could actually turn on a miner here in Massachusetts, where energy rates are 20 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour. So that doesn't make any sense. Um, but I think, you start to see a point where buying in the spot market becomes, the more kind of straightforward and attractive solution for somebody who wants exposure to Bitcoin and has a large amount of capital to deploy. Mining may be receding as that alternative. Maybe you start to see more institutional players coming straight into the spot market. And that's the kind of activity and momentum that I think you might, ascribe to the rise in Bitcoin's price, to that kind of activity.
Well, what's also interesting is that we do have a bit of news. The Fed could start tapering bond purchases by November. I understand that it could be as much as $15 billion per month, starting as soon as mid-November. And this is according to the latest Fed minutes, which were released just 30 minutes ago from the at the end of September. Now, I mean, I'm seeing traditional markets now rising. The Dow, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ are up about, anywhere from trading flat to up about 0.9%. Could this be behind Bitcoin's bounce, or maybe, anticipation over ETFs? That's a continuing story. There could be a Bitcoin futures ETF approved any time this month.
That's right. I think we've got a countdown of a few days to see if a Bitcoin futures ETF will be approved or sort of allowed to pass into approval. That, I think, is certainly a factor driving optimism of sort of a more risk-on mentality. Certainly pushes, is positive for Bitcoin. But I think another factor worth looking at here is, to some extent, Bitcoin may be beginning to act like the digital gold that it's supposed to be. We talked about this last week with a somewhat mysterious buy of about $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin moved over the space of a few minutes on an Asian exchange. I think, if you start to think about, well, who's moving that kind of capital around, it's possible that people are moving capital, moving investment into Bitcoin in order to move it elsewhere in the world. And that's the kind of movement that you might see in a time of geopolitical or economic uncertainty. So, it's possible that some of the demand for Bitcoin may be sort of on that kind of use case of digital gold, right? A kind of a haven asset that can be very quickly moved, from one place to another, unlike gold. Right. And so that's kind of perhaps that's a kind of a risk off type of a momentum that you might be seeing in the market as well, in addition to the kind of speculative risk on type of investment that we're talking about here.